Kid Chronic and Treez, you're listening to Ruthless Politics, episode number 3.
Happy 4th of July, everybody. Happy 4th of July.
Happy Independence Day. 4th of July is just a date on a calendar. So let's put it near and dear to our hearts. You're in America, folks. If you're listening to this podcast, more than likely you are in America. And guess what? You are fucking blessed. You are blessed. There's somebody in Chad right now that's fucking hating their life. I can tell you that. You know where Chad is?
I'm not exactly sure where Chad is on the map. I'm not the best with geography.
Sub-Saharan Africa.
But I'll tell you what, if you are born in America, it is winning the genetic lottery.
Absolutely.
The geographical lottery, let's say.
Yes, it really, really is. And that's kind of, you can get very existential about that. Folks, we have a jam-packed episode. You're listening to Ruthless Politics, Kid Chronic and Treez. We're going to dive right in. The 2020 Democratic debates and the performance of the following candidates. I'm going to rattle them off real fast. You had Michael Bennet on day 2. Let's talk about, let's go over the performance in general and tell me what you think of your first opinion on
well, to go over
the winners and losers.
Yeah, okay, it's pretty simple. So we can go over the Democratic debates, and I think that basically what was interesting about the debates, well, the most interesting thing was the Kamala Harris-Biden interaction there, where I think most people would agree that Kamala kind of stole the show and is now becoming maybe the Democratic front leader against Biden. And then you had the other big players, I think Bernie and Elizabeth Warren, right? And that was kind of a wash. I think they performed exactly how everybody would expect them to perform. So I don't think they really moved too much. I thought that it was interesting Pete Buttigieg maybe had a small bump. I thought that because he took credit for the problems in his own area, I thought that was kind of nice, and I thought that was endearing, so I think that helped him. And then I thought that he called out the right wing for using religion as kind of a mask to cover their bad behavior or poor stances on some issues, and I thought that was pretty good.
He seems to, that's a thing for him. This is not the first time he's invoked religion against the Republicans, like, you know, and I think because he's used it with the gay thing as well. It's like kind of how dare you, you know, judge I kind of thing. And this is the second time he's done that. The biggest bump.
I want to touch on that real quick, though.
Mm-hmm.
It's so true because that you've caught on to that. It is the second time, and it's interesting because what he's doing is he's kind of rotting the religious debate from the inside out. So normally, if you're a liberal or if you're an atheist or if you're progressive or if you've had any experience with the church, a lot of us kind of write the church off and say, that's not really for us. But here's this guy who's been written off by the church, who's a member of the LGBTQ community, and normally he would just turn his back on the church and say, well, the church turned their back on me, the hell with them. But instead he stayed in the church, says he values the church, and he's challenging the church to either toss him out or admit he's right, and it's fascinating.
Well, he, as far as the polls show, because there is a CNN poll that we can quickly talk about, Joe Biden was the big loser. He lost about 10 points. Okay.
Ouch.
So the Kamala Biden debacle did help Kamala. The rise of Kamala is certain. She got a huge bump, about 9%. She is actually number 2 now in the CNN poll, Kid Chronic. Biden's still holding on to number 1, but Kamala and Elizabeth Warren kind of have jumped Bernie Sanders, or certainly have put themselves now up closer to where he is. I believe he didn't do too well in the second night. Very stuck on his 1%, 1%. And it looks like that he is just a victim of being Bernie. It's either going to win or it's going to lose. Couple other highlights I want to ask you about. So definitely the rise of Kamala, as we see, and we'll go over the other night too, because I think we're leading off with the second night because it was so many more fireworks. It was a much better night. But you had the rise of Kamala. What about when they asked about health care for illegals? Everyone put their hand up on that panel. Even I think it was the New York Post is basically like, you just committed suicide. What's your opinion here about what Americans think? We're all struggling with health care, right? And then every candidate put their hand up and said, if you're not even a citizen here, you should be on this whole situation as well. Well, we don't even have it for Americans.
Wow. Okay, so that's a lot to unpack. So let me start at the top there. I think that the reason that Bernie is fading back a little bit, and gosh, he does stay on message with it, just taking it to the 1%, which is why we all love Bernie, but he's so far to the left, he is not your natural candidate. You know, he's a far left candidate, so it's only natural for him to kind of phase out as the process goes. I think it was unusual that he went as far as he did last time. What is fascinating, too, about Biden falling off is I think that's just, he may still be in the first place, but I think that's just the beginning of many small chips that are going to come into the fortress that is Camp Biden that's going to slowly take him out of the race ultimately. And then what was our main part of the question here?
Well, and then what it led to was healthcare for illegals.
Oh,
On
yes,
day 2,
of
everybody has their hand up.
So yeah, man, when that happened, that question was such like a loaded question, because here's the thing. If you're a Democrat and you stand for health care for all people, there's 11 million immigrants in the country at any given time. So they're going to the emergency room. They're part of the people bogging down the system. So the idea is, if you give a public option, everybody here in the public in the country would be able to just go to the hospital and get treated. If you are walking down the street and you are hit by a city bus, you would just go and get your broken leg treated, and there would be no bill. And I think that's the kind of healthcare utopia that we're hoping for in the richest country in the world. So the Republicans have no healthcare plan. They have no answer for this.
Should it be extended?
But hold on. How do they get that question into the debate? Because that is such a question that takes everybody down this left field, where it says, well, okay, should illegals get healthcare? And the answer off the top of most people's heads will be like, no, an illegal immigrant is not part of the country. They shouldn't be able to get healthcare. But then they're here, and there's so many of them, and they're using the healthcare anyway. And so it takes the whole debate down this rabbit hole, and it gives the whole right wing a whole huge kind of argument to stand on, if you will, when really this is kind of a red herring. Americans need healthcare. They should vote to give themselves free healthcare, and they shouldn't be worried about this little small part of the argument.
Let me stop you here. It sounds great. It's a system that's not even in place for Americans. And part of it is we can't even figure it out. For there's so many people doing without it right now. So there has to be maybe a line drawn. I think it's very simple.
Well, no one would argue that just illegals get it. And that's what the right wing takes it as. Oh, you're going to give them health care, but you're not going to give us health care. No, you're all going to get health care.
No, of course. Moving on to that. Another thing, let's talk about Kamala. Kamala used the racial thing, as we know. I told everybody, well, listen, Joe Biden will escape the racial thing that came about with Cory Booker, because Cory Booker's on day 1 and Joe Biden's on day 2. He's going to slip by that little problem that was starting to bubble before the debates, if you remember. And sure as shit, Kamala Harris hits him with Cory Booker's talking point. And it propelled her. I mean, Cory Booker's got to be saying to himself, you son bitch, you son bitch.
Cory Booker's really running a terrible campaign, isn't he?
He should
be better. He should be doing better. Him and Eric Swalwell, I don't understand the campaigns they're running. Maybe there's a bigger meaning. Maybe they've agreed to be someone's vice or something else, and that's why they're running these half-ass campaigns. But if this is the best they can do, that's just awful.
Well, it sets them up for the future as well. We talked about this before. You can run and run and run, and no one's going to care. So Cory Booker, you're getting to know who he is on a public national spotlight that a lot of people don't know.
I think he's so famous, if he doesn't make a real run for it, then he actually hurts his image a little bit. That's what I think.
He should have performed better in what's happening in this field. I think he's
coming off petty.
Yeah. So Kamala Harris, let's go into the Don Jr. thing here. The Kamala Harris situation, let me just set it up for you. So Kamala Harris has this racial situation. She uses Cory Booker's talking point, attacks Biden. It's the moment of the whole thing. I am that little girl on that bus. I am that little girl on that bus.
Really good. It's really good.
I am that girl on that bus. But so now it's on shirts, by the way. This became like this is a meme. This is a fucking meme. So she does this, but here's the news, folks. A couple things you didn't know about Kamala Harris. Her father was a Stanford professor, and her mother was like a scientist, a doctor and a scientist. So here's the news. My dad hammered nails, and my mom was a clerk. She was really much more privileged than I was, no matter how white I am, and I'm very pale. My bottom line is this, Pat, Kid Chronic, and it's going to lead to Don Jr., because then we started to question her African-American experience that she linked to this whole Biden situation. And you find out, well, in fact, you're half Jamaican by your father, half Indian by your mother, very beautiful, multicultural girl, but you're not an African-American. You have a different perspective. I think that's fair. What did Don Jr. say about that?
Okay, so I'm not even going to get into Don Jr. yet, because I'm going to step back a little bit further.
All right, go
so
ahead.
I think that in the debate, when Kamala went after Joe Biden for the busing thing, one, I can't believe that Joe Biden just had such poor answer for it. He should be like, listen, I've been in politics a very long time. I'm very experienced. I've been on lots of sides of lots of different issues, and I've evolved. And if you look at my life and my evolution as a politician, I'm in the right place now to beat Trump. That's all he has to say. The fact that he can't get those words out of his mouth, let me know that he's not our candidate. You know, now the thing with Kamala, what I thought was fascinating is, do I care that Kamala was like in the second wave of busing and got bused to school and experienced like some light racism in her life or whatever? Sure. Okay, great. Whatever. But at the end of the day, what I was impressed with is not that. I was impressed with Team Kamala's ability to take Biden out in a debate, to create a go viral moment, and then to execute it. So to deliver on time, make it into a soundbite, get it onto the t-shirts, get it onto the memes, take over the race. That is what's impressive. If she can that, and she can continue to do that with whoever she's up against, then she has a clear chance to go all the way to the White House.